bit, you mean like a little bit of time? What do you mean? A little bit?
I don't know, like maybe for start, well, not just time, but like, and you want to be able to come and go, and you want to be able to do all these things that we don't feel are safe for the boys right now. But maybe if you come 2 days a week and one of us is there or Walter is there, I don't know how it should work, for a while, and you keep coming and you're straight and you're sober, then maybe we can open it up more and it can be more like what you would like it to be. I mean, we can do that, right? Can't we? It doesn't have to be the whole thing.
So what Ann, you're saying is you'd like to build up a base and a trust here, and as you see that it is working appropriately and it's good for the boys and everyone, that it can expand.
If
it works.
Yes.
Everyone feels that it's working. So you need to really establish some real guidelines as to what shows that it's working. You know, if this, and this happens, then yes, we'll expand a little bit more.
And I can say from the kids' point of view, what's most important to me is that whatever minimal level you start at, I would rather have that be really minimal but really easy to meet. So that
Success.
So that come hell or high water, they know that they're going to see mom and dad, you know, whatever it is, you know, Fridays between 4 and 6. Then if more time is available, then that's sort of gravy to them. It may not work out, you know, there may be some procedures that need to work out between you two as to how that extra time happens. But at least they know, I'm going to see mom and dad. You know,
Everybody knows. They know.
Everybody.
Mom and dad know. Grandma and grandpa.
If I get to see mom and dad more, terrific. I know I'm at least going to get that. And the more I thought about this showing up impaired issue, at the end of the day, it really needs to be their call, not with your. I mean, it would be like if you had the kids and they were going to go off with their friends, and their dad showed up and you felt that he was impaired. You wouldn't let the kids go with them, would you? No. And I think, you know, if they're going to be the guardians,
it needs to be our call.
that needs to be their call. That's pretty much the end of the story, I think, because they're the ones that have responsibility for their safety.
So I'm kind of unclear on something here. So if we come to your house to see our kids, are we going to be supervised the whole time, or are we going to be allowed time alone with them? You know, can we take them somewhere? Do we have to sit in your living room? Like, what's this going to look like?
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you here, unfortunately, because I'm just looking at the time. The time is just about up, and you posed some really good questions, Tiffany, and questions that are not easy to answer, that are going to require some real discussion. So here's what I'm going to ask each of you to do. I think you realize and understand the things that need to be discussed, including what does it mean, what does it look like, what are the standards that are going to be used. So what I'd like you to do, each of you, before you come back for the next meeting, is to look at what the boys' schedule is, what your schedule is. Come in with a calendar that marks all those things out. And the two of you, as best you can, what a basic work schedule would look like for each of you. That at least gives a beginning as to what kind of maybe basic beginning type of arrangement that you can create. It'll be a starting point. Then you need to start looking at what happens. How does it start? Does it start small and then expand? And if it does, what is the criteria that's going to be used on deciding how it's going to expand? And then, you know, Curtis, we still have that issue that you have out there, and that is your real desire to be able to stop by and say, hey, you know, hi, how are you? Got an hour off, I just want to say hi, guys. It's something that is still on the table there that needs to be discussed. But at this point, you really need to understand what each of your schedules are, because that's really the number one. I think these boys are busy all the time, as far as I can see. They got Cub Scouts, they got sports, they got whatever. That's their life. And part of what may go on is that if you want to be part of that life, then you've got to be part of those activities as well. In other words, the consistency and predictability is important. And I don't think anybody here says that that's not true. What you're saying is that you're their parents, you need to be part of their lives, and nobody's saying any differently. But how is that going to work best for everyone, and most importantly, these two little guys? So I hate to cut you off like this, and I'm sorry we didn't have more time today. We will have 2 hours next time, and what I'm hoping is that if you come back with schedules, think about, the two of you think about what might work for you on a weekly basis. Just a very basic time when you know that you can see your guys, whether it's together or alone. I mean, it may be that, as you said, Tiffany, you have a together time, and you have a time when you each get to see it. Look at their schedules. What's going to work? When are those open times? And I would encourage all of you to be as flexible as possible. May not be easy, but you know, this is all important to all of you. You want them to have parents, you want them to have good lives. So. Okay? Any questions before we leave? Real quick, not deep questions, just quick questions. Sounds like you have great little boys. I mean, what I will say to you is, I've heard nothing but great things about these two little guys. So you are very lucky, all of you, to have these two little boys in your lives. See you in a couple weeks. I think I'd like to start out this conversation here briefly by saying that this mediation is a little bit different than the normal type of mediation that you're learning to do, in that the court is standing in the background, and you really, this is a situation where you need to come to a resolution, or somebody else is going to do it for you, and it's the court that's going to do it for you. So it puts a little bit different twist on the conversation. And to me, it has a little bit different flavor when I do these types of mediations. So I would just like to open that up to the rest of you, and maybe see how that affected you, or what vantage point or comment you would make about that. Anyone here?
You don't need to different from real life. You need to different in terms of the people's ability to make a decision. You have to make a decision,
Correct.
Or it's going to be made for you.
That's right.
Gotcha.
And in a normal mediation, you don't come in and say, okay, you've got to make this decision. If they
Right.
don't make a decision, it's really no skin off, you know, well, it's no skin off my nose anyway, but basically your goal is to make a decision.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a small claims court, where if you don't make a
Right.
decision, it's going
Correct.
to go in court. It's
Right.
just that the stakes here are not
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
Right.
very large stakes.
Yeah. And you said at the beginning, but I only really felt it when the state would speak, and I was like, oh.
The state's sitting over there.
Yeah, I mean, you can really feel it coming from your presence. You know, that really made me sort of reflect on
Well, it is that funny phrase, that the best alternative to reading, what was that?
negotiated agreement.
Yeah, but what's that, there's an
That-
Batman, right, I mean, this is truly Batman.
She's sitting right there. Yeah,
That's right.
There's a bad night.
Except it wouldn't even be a negotiated agreement, it would be the court saying.
That's right.
Imposed.
And
That's right.
It is interesting to me that nobody asked, I almost did put the mediator on the spot, like, well, if we don't want anything, what kind of things is the court likely to say?
Yeah,
And that's a very good question.
yeah.
And in fact, it's an important question, and probably will come up in the next session, because you need to know that. And it does put a little more urgency in the conversation.
And you would assume that the attorneys are in the background giving some guidance on that, but you don't know around the table what sort of
Different
Right.
guys.
what sort of expectation the various parties have.
Mhm.
And that's really sort of key, because at the end of the line, that's what you're always comparing it to. What if we don't reach an agreement, what's the court likely to do? And, I would think it would be challenging for the mediator not to know what people think.
You know, as a party, one thing that was sort of surprised me was how relieved I felt when you suggested starting small and you suggested starting small. I just thought, oh, good.
Yeah.
We could probably come up with something that will work
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and I know for me, there was a point where I, as a character, realized that I had no power, and I didn't know that walking in here. This character did not, I thought, of course I have some power, I'm the mom, you know? And I thought that that would be very interesting for the mediator to be attentive to, because you knew that I didn't have any real power in the situation. But you never let on, you know,
You
that,
do have some power, and that we were talking about this a little bit. That's one of the reasons why I started out asking the two of you what these little boys were like.
At the very beginning.
At the very beginning, because if I had gone to the grandparents, and this is what Grandma was asking me, why didn't you ask us? We're gonna be the parents, we're gonna be in charge of these little kids, because that completely disenfranchises you.
Yeah.
It's almost as if saying, hey, you're not even part of this
Right.
mediation. You've already been, you know, cast aside, so let's see what you think.
Right.
You need to understand, you do have some power, because
in the negotiation,
if,
not
if,
much.
if you aren't given any power at all, you won't do it.
Yeah, right.
You won't come
Right.
when you're supposed to.
Right.
It's to everybody's advantage that you buy into this and have some sort of power.
Mm.
Really, and I think, and as the, at least as the grandmother, I mean, I know how much these little boys do want some relationship with their parents.
Yeah.
So there's that too, just sort of out of general concern for the boys, that you're not totally alone.
But it is fundamentally different than normal mediation, as you said, because you go in with at least the illusion that you have two independent parties of equal bargaining power working out a solution. And that from the get-go is clearly not the case here, not even in an illusory way, just plain isn't.
Well, Scott, ultimately, they could say, we're not buying into this, we're going to trial. And you don't actually know that the trial is going to end up with their losing. I mean, there is a possibility they could go to trial and their rights not be terminated. There is that possibility. Probably very, very small, but there is that possibility.
And the two of you were really good at making the case that that wasn't a good direction to go in, I thought. Pretty much right off the bat.
There was a sort of a technical piece of how you handled it, which I thought was really interesting. I think given the nature of the large group, and the different interests around the table, and also the potential real emotionality here, when you really stress the no interrupting. Because I know one of the things that we've talked about is, you know, not laying down rules for adults and letting adults have the conversation they need to have, but you were, and I imagine it's because there's a lot going on here, not much time, and so you do need a tighter control of the process.
You do. I never set down rules except in these kind of situations. I let the parties establish their own rules.
We're probably more polite than
You were,
many could be.
yes.
The other thing that I found interesting was having the TCF and the GAL person here
Yeah.
simply for informational purposes. If we had not been here, there wouldn't have been any verification of what they were saying about the need for stability. It would just been these two back yesterday. But I think, I would guess it would make some difference to the parents in this case to hear both the DCF worker and the GALs, you know, sort of verify that that was important to the
These are
children.
the reality checks.
Right.
This is the real world. These are, well, these are the real world too, but these are the feelings. This is the, you know, the conversation about how it's gonna happen. This is the state saying, hey.
And from the grandmother's point of view too, there's a real comfort in that, because despite everything, I mean, it's not unmixed emotions.
Oh, yeah.
It's very confusing.
Right.
You know, so it really helped to be able to look at the GAL and say,
Objectivity.
is this right?
Mhm.
Or, you know, so.
So that's gonna make your job easier, right? I mean, having them
Oh,
here.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
I never actually had this situation, and the more I
As
look
a
about,
GAL.
the more I look at it, the more I think that, if I'm in a case, you know, where there's a GAL, you know, I'm gonna, in fact, invite them to the mediation. I think it would be,
I wonder aloud, though, that allowed having the presence of people outside of the, well, you're really in the negotiation, but we're somewhat, I felt, somewhat judged by these authority figures, so that the emotional content is somewhat, I don't know about repressed is the right word. but
Subdued.
Subdued, yeah. As a party, I didn't go after you as I might have had you two not been here, because I would be afraid as a party, and this would inhibit my behavior in the mediation negotiation.
Because theoretically, the mediator plays a certain amount of that role.
The reason that the two of you are also here is you have to sign off on this agreement. The GAL and the state, the attorneys and the parties. So you are a party to this negotiation. So even though you're the ones who are taking care of the kids, they're parties to it.
Can I just put in one
Yes.
piece that you did as mediator, Christine, that I really appreciated in this? You said from my experience, and now I can't remember exact, but you kind of laid out a scenario and said from my experience, I use that a lot. And I just found it in this context, I don't know how they felt, but I could feel kind of a shift. Oh, yeah, you know, you're not the only ones.
It was the
kind of
weekly check-in.
normalizes.
It was the weekly schedule check-in.
Yes,
from my experience.
yeah. And so it normalized things for them,
Yeah.
and that was, I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, that felt really nice.
Yeah. And I use that a lot too.
Point that concerned me is that in terms of mediations where you're mediating over stuff, this is different because you're mediating about two individuals who are not in the room
That's right.
and are supposedly, and I say supposedly intentionally, supposedly their best interest, but yet the conversation may not focus on their best interest, but may be focusing on, the party may be focusing on their best interest. And from, I would think that from a mediator point of view, trying to manage that would present some challenges.
And the time is up. Now we've used up our 10 minutes, so thank you all.
Can I ask one final question, Christine? And Susan can cut it off if she wants to. So you seem very comfortable with the level of emotion that we were having around here. Does it take a lot more before you get uncomfortable with the
You guys were pretty tame.
I was gonna say, this is,
Yeah. Well, part of that was the number of people in the room. If it might have been just us and them, I think it would have been to a different level, but I felt really kind of subdued by these other, contained by the other presences that represented like the state to me. Yeah.